Well, Global Chairman of KPMG delivered an address in Melbourne outlining the major challenges and trends in the global economy. It includes the risks, opportunities and also barriers to growth. Well, Sky News business reporter Matt Gallant spoke with Michael Andrew about current investor trends and how Australia can improve growth in the Asia Pacific.
Matt, it's interesting. The trend at KPMG we're seeing is investment into what we call the mints: Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, Turkey and Southeast Asia.
You mentioned Mexico during the talk. Can you walk me through Mexico and why that's a particular interest?
Mexico is of huge interest at the moment because you have this Hispanic population which is now dominating the southern United States. So if you have a product that works in Mexico, it works well in Texas, in California, in Arizona. At the same time, you're also seeing the Spanish countries in South America do exceedingly well: Chile, Colombia, Peru. And with the Spanish issues at the moment, most Spanish businesses are diversifying their capital into Mexico. So this is an economy where you're seeing strong government, good infrastructure, good reform, and has a wonderful future.
What does Australia need to do to improve growth in the Asia Pacific?
Australia needs to rethink its business model into the Asia Pacific area. There's too much fly in, fly out. There's too much direct export. There's not enough physical presence on the ground of senior management. Asia is a very relationship-driven economy. To be taken seriously in these marketplaces, you must base senior people there who develop the right relationships with the local regulators, the local business people, your local customers, and the companies who get that right are already putting a wonderful blueprint for the next 10 years.
Now, overnight we've seen Japan introduce a number of stimulatory measures. What's your views on this and how will it affect the business in the region?
Well, Japan has gone through 10 years of stagflation, so any shock therapy at the moment is regarded as a good thing. And what it's done, particularly to my mind, is actually re-energised Japanese business people. They're now looking at much more aggressive investment strategies and policies, and confidence is coming back into the Japanese economy. And I think that's a positive wildcard we're actually going to see in the second half of 2013.
Turning to China now, what opportunities are there for Australia in that region?
China is transforming from being a high-volume, export-driven commodity to increasing in technology and services, but it doesn't really have the skills and the expertise. So it's actually looking for countries like Australia to implement business models in the services sector, in the banking sector and in the design and technology sector, which can actually transform its economy higher up the supply and value chain.
We're seeing some positive news come out of the United States. What are your thoughts on manufacturing in that country?
I think we're seeing the reindustrialisation of the United States. The existence of shale gas, a cheap and plentiful energy resource, is making international investors put their manufacturing facilities back into the marketplace. If you think about it, you have a deregulated labour market. You have a proximity to the largest consumer base in the world. You have political stability that are going on there. In that sense, you have an abundant population of management talent as well. So when I go and talk to the large Korean and Japanese car companies, they want to go back with their manufacturing into the United States.
And what's your outlook for the Eurozone?
Eurozone, I think the banking crisis has passed in the Eurozone, but we're now into some very painful fiscal reforms. And I think we're heading for a decade of relatively slow growth, structural deleveraging, and having to really change many of the fundamental traditional values in Europe for them to become globally competitive again in these markets. They don't have the same natural advantages in cheap energy, in market deregulation, with a growing demographic that the other countries around the world do at the moment.
What's Australia's reputation like on the world stage, in your opinion?
Australia's regarded as being a pretty stable niche economy, obviously very exposed in terms of the commodity cycle, very stable politically. There's some comment obviously around sovereign risk taxation, high-cost country to do business in with the exchange rate, but generally not incredibly influential in terms of world thinking, unfortunately.
You meet a lot of CEOs on your travels, but what's the general feeling for company growth for 2013?
Well, at the International Business Council this year, 79% of all CEOs felt we were getting back into a growth phase. And after having 3 years of austerity, they're now looking at new markets, new services, new technologies, and investing the cash that's starting to flow into their companies into these opportunities. So they are much more optimistic than most economists I meet at the moment about the prospects for the global economy.